Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 365. We are all currently at Fine Woodworking New England in Manchester, Connecticut. And even though I'm recording this the week prior, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's a beautiful day and we're having a blast. Everybody is in great spirits and great health, and we're all just sitting around talking about woodworking. If you're missing out right now, I hope you don't feel bad about that. I hope that you feel like there is a woodworking community around you, and if there isn't, head on over to the Discord channel and log in and hang out and yap about woodworking. You know what? Woodworking can be kind of an isolated thing, and there's no reason to keep it that way. So find some camaraderie any which way you can. I think it's important. If you can't do it live and in person at a guild or at an event, find it online, find it somewhere. I hope everyone finds some woodworking camaraderie right now. I'm not going to promote anything. All right, on with the show.
All right, so funny podcast story. I was, my wife was celebrating her work-iversary yesterday, so we decided to get Chinese takeout. So I went to the place to pick it up. You know, like a lot of restaurants, they have a couple of spots designated simply for the takeout folk, and pulled into one, and there was a little SUV next to my car, and just kind of did the nod for the guy and went in, grabbed my food, came out. And as I was about to back out of my spot, he's like waving at me and then holding up his phone. And so I stopped and rolled down my window, and holds up his phone, and he was listening to the Shop Notes podcast with me talking. And he's like, I was listening to the podcast, and all of a sudden I turned my head, and there you are.
Wow. He summoned you into reality.
Right.
And did he force you to answer woodworking questions then?
No, he didn't. He just thought it was just the weirdest thing in the whole world that he was listening to my voice, and then he just like turns, and then there's
the real Phil.
It's jarring.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I guess this is how we're going to start, is with Phil telling a podcast story, which is awesome. But I do need to introduce Phil, who the audience is fairly aware of. Phil from Woodsmith Shop, the TV show, Shop Notes podcast. What's your title at Woodsmith Magazine?
Executive editor is what they hung on me.
Lord Huber. And we are, for not the first time, you've been on before, Bridget.
This is the third time.
This is your third time?
Yeah. I've been on twice before. But this is my first time as an employee.
Yes. So we have new associate digital editor of finewoodworking.com, Bridget Gruber, or better known as Dinkle. I still struggle as to, like, every time I go to reference you, I'm like, am I going to say Dinkle? Am I going to say Bridget? What am I being professional? Am I being casual? So.
I struggle with that too. Still trying to find the balance of.
Or did you find yourself talking in the third person a lot?
Yes. Well, I don't know. Just like telling people, yeah, like you can call me Dinkle in a work setting. I guess that's okay.
Yeah.
So, But yeah, I'm very happy to be here. And yeah, I'm the new associate digital editor. For those who aren't familiar with me, I've been woodworking just as a hobbyist for the past 10 years of my life, and it has been all-consuming for me. And I've spent, the last 10 years being kind of like a digital video producer, video editor person for a lot of people. Slowly funneled more and more into doing video editing for woodworkers, doing some work for Fine Woodworking magazine. And that's how I ended up here. So very excited to be here.
So you did the video edits on Tim Coleman's video workshop and Dan Fea's video workshop. And if anyone has noticed that the thumbnail images have been amped up lately on Fine Woodworking or on Shop Notes, that's Dinkle's doing. And also, so I guess I mean, I should just come right out and say we've given Dinkle veto power over us with all things aesthetic on social media and all, so like day one, she was like, I don't like this font.
Whoa.
Okay, we got to back.
Sorry. I'm just excited to help out.
No, it's been a breath of fresh air. It's been awesome. We needed somebody to come in and like say, y'all look old, because we are, and let's change this up. So we're super. I am just stoked as all get out, and out of focus on the video right now. There we go. So I figure it was time to get things in the mix, and we had to get Dinkle in the mix for the podcast, and we had some questions come up. And right off the bat, I'm just going to warn the audience, we're going to call ourselves the Thrifty Trio.
I like that.
I accept that.
Yeah. And you're not going to catch any of us spending $400 on a hand plane. Mad respect, but it's just not happening in my household.
I do need to elephant in the room. I am sitting in front of a high dollar CNC, right? But that is for a review for the magazine. I am going to be purchasing it slowly, but I am going to be purchasing it because I can't live without it now. But yes, I do have some high dollar tools. I do like to spend stupid money on like my little Ukrainian made knife and screwdriver and things like that. But when it comes to machinery, I am generally not going to spend a lot of money. When it comes to traditional hand tools, I'm not going to spend a lot of money. Bridget is the same, I would say. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Phil, you've been doing this forever, but you have a very down-to-earth wood shop, am I going to call it?
Okay. Yeah, that works. I have a really compact space. Yeah. So I've been trying to figure out like what exactly I have for tools that really matter and kind of lean on those and try to keep it focused. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a couple questions, and let's just jump right into them. We have a couple questions that I thought would be good for the Thrifty Trio. Right off the bat, I am going to, and this is a question that we don't normally necessarily answer, but this question's from Scott. I've got a solid shop setup with a 36-inch saw stop contractor saw, a router table, 8-inch helical grizzly joiner, full-size drill press, DeWalt 735 planer, straight knife version, and a grizzly 14-inch bandsaw. Money isn't a huge obstacle. Still, I absolutely hate spending it just to feel like I'm doing something when the tools I have are already working fine. Here's the dilemma I'd love your thoughts on, and maybe a discussion on air. Does it make sense to upgrade what I already own, or am I better off banking the cash toward an entirely different, better equipment down the road? And then some specifics. For the DeWalt 735, is swapping in a bird helical cutter head worth it, or would that money be smarter spent elsewhere? For the Grizzly 14-inch bandsaw, does adding a riser block, better wheels, upgraded tension hardware, ceramic guide blocks, etc. transform it enough to justify the spend, or am I just polishing a perfectly good mid-tier saw? I love your honest take. I build mostly furniture as a hobby, 2 to 3 pieces a year as a commission or for myself. And then he noted, I too miss the audience question format, and I figured I'd be part of the solution, Ben. And I appreciate that, Scott.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yes. So let's start with the specific, because that's a nicely outfitted shop in my head.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to come in right away and say, I wouldn't do anything to that shop. I think it sounds perfectly fine, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, do we want to focus on the specifics or the specific tool questions, Phil? Or, I mean,
no, we could, and I think we should at some point here, but okay. I think overall, I'm going to agree with Bridget that he's got a solid setup, and there's really no, I would spend your time mostly in figuring out what each of those tools can do compared to the kinds of projects that you want to make. As an instrument guy, Ben, you could probably relate to this. My daughter played flute and started off with a student flute. And then as she improved her skills, she was basically outplaying the instrument and then had to step up. I think in many ways, woodworking tools, we need to look at it that way. Wait until you are outplaying that particular tool before thinking about upgrading. Because I think based on the kinds of projects that he says that he's building and how he's using them, there's a lot of margin there, in my opinion, for him to do a lot of work before he's going to get to the point where he feels like the tools are holding him back.
Well, that about does it for this episode of Shop Talk Live. No, I mean, because you nailed it. That's like, we're going through it with cellos right now with my son, or we were, and it was like, oh, do we upgrade? And then I've just been thinking, it's like, yeah, we could spend a bunch of money on a new instrument for him, but it's not holding him back right now. And if your planer's not holding, so here are the things that could be holding him back, right? Needs a wider planer.
Yeah, I have a 735 in my shop and went with, this gets into the specifics. I have the 735, had the straight knives for the longest time, and then upgraded to a helical head. I didn't get the bird one. I opted for, speaking of Thrifty Trio, one of the smaller priced versions that you can find online, and it works really great. The nice part is, and this fits into my Thrifty part, is as a hobbyist, those carbide cutters are going to last forever. And then because he's already dealing with that with the jointer, like when you have a carbide cutter head, all of a sudden you don't have to really pay attention to grain direction when you're feeding pieces across a jointer or a planer. So you're going to get much smoother cuts. They're going to last way longer. Your satisfaction with that tool is going to go up. So that's one that I could consider.
Why? I'm surprised you upgraded, because in my head, so I love the idea of carbide, like helical carbide heads and all that. But
yeah,
if I was buying a new machine, I think it would be on the list.
Yes.
If I'm not buying a new machine, I think I have a hard time justifying it. So talk me into the thought process of upgrading it.
For my perspective, I had two things. One is the 735 is just a really solidly built machine to start with. Yeah. That it had the bones around it to warrant it, knowing that it's performed in the top portable planers forever. Yeah. We had one in the shop here at Woodsmith that was in use every day, and we used it really hard for 12 years before it finally gave out. Mm-hmm. So in my shop, it's going to last, 130 years or something like that. So, that made sense to me. And then the other thing is, in my small shop, I don't have a dust collector, but the 735 has a built-in blower. So I can just hook up the dust port to my Cyclone straight, and the built-in blower blows all the chips in, activates the Cyclone, and I don't have to have a separate shop vac dust collector or whatever hooked up to it.
That is a big consideration with the 735. So why did you upgrade the knives? Just cause?
Just cause it was mostly for the fact of having them last longer and being able to deal with material that has grain that isn't necessarily all going in the same direction, which is every board, So I get much smoother cuts. It actually runs a lot quieter. That's probably the only downside of the 735 is it's a screamer.
Bridget, do you have a plan? I don't know exactly what your shop is outfitted with.
Yeah. I have a Porter cable, just benchtop planer. I've had it forever and it's fine. Like I always stick a piece of MDF to make like a faux bed because those,
Oh yeah.
The flaps are not trustworthy to stay flat. But yeah, I mean it works, and if you have the hand tools to back you up, it becomes less of an issue. So I mean, yeah, I've had that benchtop planer forever and I'm fine with it. I have no intention of upgrading it. I feel like the majority of my upgrades, and this is not really woodworking related, it's just life related, is that I don't want to bring some giant cast iron machine into my basement or think about moving it. It's like I can't commit to that level of space and weight and all that. So I'm just stuck with my Porter cable benchtop and it's fine. I'm cool with it. So
yeah, I had a DeWalt 734, so not the more. I probably probably made in the same factory as the Porter cable that you have and the rigid that a lot of people had for a while. I had that. It was great. It was great. I never really felt the need to change out the cutter head I mean, the only thing that I can think of planer wise is if you need more width, you need more width, you know? And I think that's that, like, when do you get into the time to upgrade your daughter's flute, is like when it's just not going to work for you anymore. If you find yourself doing a lot of really wide things, then you need to upgrade to a 15-inch or whatever. My debate would be if I was upgrading to a bird cutter head, you're not that far off from buying like the new Grizzly 15-inch benchtop.
Right.
I don't know. So that goes into the calculus. If you needed a wider machine, that's the reason to upgrade. I don't necessarily think I would upgrade to a bird cutter head unless there was a real reason that I was using like a lot of gnarly wood or whatever. But
and I think it comes back to, he said he makes like 2 to 3 pieces a year, which sounds pretty on par for most hobbyists.
yeah.
Unless you're like your machine is functioning so poorly that you're ripping your hair out, I would just leave it and focus on the woodworking instead of just going down this tool rabbit hole of helical heads and this and that. So,
Phil, do you have a riser block on your bandsaw?
I don't. I have an old Delta that is just straight up stock. It was, yeah. I have it straight. I don't think that riser block does. I know what the riser block does, but I don't think in terms of benefits that a riser block is really helping you out much. Again, based on the types of projects that he builds, types of projects that I build, if I try to think of myself as in his shoes, the number of times where I really want to resaw something wider than 6 inches is pretty minimal. And then there's other ways to do it too.
Yeah. I do have a riser block on my Grizzly.
Okay.
I go back and forth between taking it off because the one thing that a riser block is not going to do for your bandsaw is give it enough power to really do massive amounts of resawing, and it's not going to allow you to have, a high dollar blade, like a 3/4 inch Timberwolf or something that is going to resaw like it's its job, So, last time I was out in Iowa, we were actually talking about this. I have been thinking about upgrading my bandsaw because I do find myself doing more resawing down at the fine woodworking shop. And then I wind up in the situation of, oh, I trusted this blade and I shouldn't have, or, like, there's something about a communal shop that is risky sometimes. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm not big, even though I have a riser block, I'm not big on the riser block upgrade. Unless you just find yourself with like 8-inch blades or 8-inch boards all the time, you're not going to get the 12-inch out of it. So,
yeah. And you've gone down the path of upgrading all the guides and things like that too, and have reverted, right?
I downgraded my guides actually.
Okay.
My bandsaw came with ball bearing guides and all of that. And I believe one of the bearings locked up. And I just found them really finicky to dial in. And the Delta at the fine woodworking shop with like the stinking little blocks that you push in and that's it, and tighten down the wing nut is not finicky. And I think if something's easy to do, you're more apt to do it when you need to do it. So I actually downgraded my Grizzly cells, the guide block holders for regular cool blocks or whatever.
Sure.
And I took off the upgraded because I have a Grizzly 055 LX or something, and it had upgrades on it, and I downgraded that. But what about you, Dink?
My bandsaw. So my bandsaw originally for years, I had a Wen 9-inch bandsaw, which that is a very, very budget brand. And it took me through some chapters of my life. It did an okay job,
That's such a poetic way of saying it.
But that was the one upgrade in my shop where I was like, okay, this needed to happen. Where the Wen bandsaw, it was so underpowered that I would really only use it to make templates for routing. So cutting out 1/4-inch MDF or 1/4-inch underlayment. And now I have a 10-inch Rikon that I use for chair making, and it's great. I love it. And it's like, some people might see it as kind of a tiny bandsaw or whatever, but me going from the Wen 9-inch to the Rikon 10-inch, I was like, this is the most powerful machine I've ever used in my life. But it's fantastic, and it gets the job done. And I really wish that I would have bought it 10 years ago instead of a contractor table saw, but you live and you learn. So, and and every day I move further away from my table saw. I hate that dang thing. So
am I surrounded by anti-table saw people again?
Not yet. I don't want to be that person. I'm just talking about my lived experience. Because it's like, I think it's just my table saw. It's a Bosch contractor table saw that I bought when I was like 22. And it does some things, but I don't know. It's just very inaccurate and very underpowered. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not getting rid of it. I love my little table saw, my little Inca, but I've actually been thinking about moving some stuff around in the shop, and I think the table saw is just going to get pushed off to a corner because I really don't use it all that much. And so going back to, I think that covers most of the specifics for Scott that he talked about. So we're saying just save the money. I think the three of us.
Yeah.
Save the money.
Yeah. He can invest in good blades, nice router bits. I think probably the only thing that I would add that I don't remember you mentioning on his list was maybe a drill press. I have a drill press and love it. Or does he have one on there?
Full-size drill press, yeah.
He has a full-size drill press. Okay, so yeah.
No, but one thing that wasn't mentioned, and I think that this is a great place to get to start throwing a little money around.
Okay.
Hand tools. Like, it's because you can slowly really add to your arsenal with, like if you are primarily because there was no hand tools mentioned. So if you're primarily a machine tool woodworker, it's like, why don't you get a spoke shave. See what that does for your work. Or, I'm a real big fan of like used nice Stanley number 4 from, the old days.
Right.
Something like that. I mean, if you're itching to buy things, hand tools are a pretty good investment. They're going to maintain their value. And
yeah, absolutely. They're evergreen.
Good chisels.
Right.
Yeah. So
a nice back saw.
Yeah. What
yeah,
do you use
I would agree with that. What's that?
What do you have for a back saw at home? I
have the Lee Nielsen carcass saw. I think it's like 14 inches long. And that's my primary hand saw for joinery. So I use it for dovetails, tenons. I had gone to a Lee Nielsen hand tool event years ago in Kansas City and was just taken by the fact that this was a nice all-purpose saw that I could do all kinds of stuff, rip cuts with it, cross cuts with it, and it does it extremely well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's such like and I'm kind of have been going through this journey for the past like 3 or 4 years or so, but there's such a world that opens up when you learn how to efficiently incorporate hand tools and power tools. Because I've heard someone say, I can't remember who it was, but they said, and this is just one person's opinion, but they said if you're making less than 40 pieces of furniture a year, which is a lot, you're not going to get that much faster with exclusively power tools versus hand tools. And it's like, for most hobbyists, if you're making 2 to 3 unique pieces a year, you can actually speed up the process a lot by getting really good with using a jack plane or a spoke shave or your block plane and all that, instead of, trying to jig up something weird on the table saw safely or the planer and all that. So yeah, I would say save that money for sure. I would take a really nice hand tool over a helical head cutter any day, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. I could definitely see that.
I was starting to giggle when you were talking about the Lee Nielsen handsaw, Phil, because we were shooting with Bill Pavlock a couple of weeks ago, and he was using all Lee Nielsen handsaws, and we were talking about him. He goes, "Remember when we all thought those were expensive?" Because handsaws have like turned into like this, and it's awesome. Yeah. I'm so glad that there's all of these boutique makers out there, feeding their families making handsaws. It's a wonderful thing. And I have a Bad Axe carcass saw that, was a big Christmas present. But yeah, like the Lee Nielsen now is like the middle of the road affordable version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it was enough when I bought that to like not hyperventilate after a while. Like, what did I just spend money on?
Yeah. Yeah. Great saws.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Let's jump over to this one's a wild card from Ezra. And Phil, you might be about the only person in my circle of woodworkers who has the ability to answer this. So here we are.
All right.
I'm interested in learning how to make wood hinges for small boxes. I get overwhelmed by all the different YouTube videos. And of course, I never get real comparisons between the different types of wood hinges that can be made. Do you have any recommendations for a beginner on the type of wood hinge to start with? Any thoughts on types of homemade wood hinges that look better or are more reliable? I've also heard about people making dedicated router stations with a fixed bit and fixed height, often for hinges or 45-degree miters that are perfectly dialed in for the application. Do you have any thoughts on building a fixed router station for a single use? So two questions there. But okay. You are both the only person I know who's made wooden hinges and the most router table obsessed person I know. So here we are. Phil Huber.
All right. Wood hinges. My experience with wood hinges is a little limited, but I would say that the place to start with wood hinges, again, because of my personality, is to set up a router table and get yourself a box joint jig. Okay. And because really wood hinges are just box joints with roundovers. So if you play around with a box joint jig and dial in the setup and create a nice fitting box joint, then 2 passes with a roundover bit, and all of a sudden you have your hinges. And you just drill a hole down the middle and just deal with it that way before getting into any kind of hyper-specific jig on it. You know, because I sent you a link for an article we did in Shop Notes where, like, Incra makes a wood hinge jig, or at least they did at one point. I don't know if they still do. That can work, but it's also one of those things where it's like the guy said, you have to be really invested in it to just dive in and go with it. So my inclination is always just to see what I can do on my own. And if it's one of those things where I feel like, yeah, this is something that's really cool to me, then I'll kind of go deeper down that path to find out if I want to do something that's dedicated for it. But I think a box joint jig works really well. And that's only because we did some projects here, like a gate leg table where you have a leg that swings out, pivots on essentially a wood hinge. And a lot of those were basically box joints with only one half of it rounded because it didn't have to go a full 180. It just had to swing out 90 or 110 degrees or something like that. So look at it that way. I think that's your starting point, because you're better off investing in a nice router table box joint jig and understanding that process than you are in a hinge jig or connection that way. That would be my starting point. The other thing is maybe start even more basic on wood hinges. And I'm thinking like Peter Follensby's boxes, where he does the like cleats on the lid and has like a little wood, and then the back of the box has like essentially a dowel cut into the ends that it's called a pintle hinge, I think. Like that's a wood hinge that has a really specific look to it and gives your box a little bit more flair, and might be a good entry point to wood hinge making than trying to make like your own essentially butt hinge kind of deal. And then wood materials to use for it is you want something that's pretty hard wearing and a little slippery. So, maybe your maples or some of your tropical woods are going to give something that is going to be durable enough to stand opening and closing. I mean, it's not like it's going to get opened 1,000 times over its lifetime, Yeah. Let's be honest, boxes mostly just sit there. But that said, you don't want it to be something too squishy. That's going to just, the harder the wood, the smoother the action of it is going to be. So like beech, white oak, cherry and walnut, those kind of things would feel really good, I think, with a hinge.
I would think that the hardest aspect of it, the wider the box would get, would be drilling that hole.
I was going to ask about the methods for that.
Yeah. And then again, if you're only basically copying a butt hinge on a small box, then you're just dealing with something that's an inch or two long, couple of fingers in it.
Back.
Yeah, don't make the hole. If you do, then I think what your approach is then route or saw a groove opposing each other on the two leaves, so that when you put it together, you have this long groove that you can just drop a brass rod in or something like that, and then cover it up with filler pieces, individual filler pieces at each of the leaves, then to try and drill like a 12-inch long hole or something like that, because the bit is just going to wander and go all over the place. Even if it were to come out the other side, there's just going to be so much deflection, I think, along the length that action, if you were trying to make like a piano hinge essentially out of wood, would be really difficult if you were to try to just straight drill it. Yeah. But I think if you go, like old tables or benches that had all thread to pull everything tight, it wasn't a hole drilled through it. It was a groove, put the all thread in and then put a piece of wood on the top of it to fill it up. It's that same kind of concept. That
makes sense.
Yeah.
Bridget, you said you had nothing to add about wood hinges. Earlier.
I have nothing to add. I'm sorry. It's something I've never done and I've never thought about. I'm not a box maker. It's just I haven't entered into that world yet of making tiny little boxes.
I don't make many boxes. I collect them though from other people though. The other day I did our maybe every 3-year dusting in the living room. And it was just like, there's just boxes everywhere. And I just kept picking up being like, is there anything in this? Oh, there's a nickel in that one.
Wow, lucky
but like,
day.
I'm friends with a lot of woodworkers. So like boxes just come about or, my wife will buy a box from somebody as a gift or something. And I love it. There's so many, there's so much personality to a lot of boxes. And, so I appreciate the form a lot more than I practice the form. But Phil, you make boxes nonstop, so
I make quite a few boxes. Yeah, they can be addicting in the sense that a lot of my woodworking I do because I love giving stuff to friends and family, and in the circles of people that I'm with, it's tough to find large pieces of furniture that people can stuff in their houses. Yeah. They have a small apartment or live in a dorm or they already have the thing, but a box you can always fit a box in. Yeah. As you can well attest, like you just said, Ben, like you can always add a box. And if you can give that box a purpose for some reason, like this is sized to hold napkins or Post-it notes or something like that, then it, there's some order to it and fulfills two purposes because whoever's going to get it is going to think of you and now they have something to use the thing for. Yeah. So
all-time favorite tool of all time for this week?
Yeah.
Shall we do this?
Sure. Hold on 1 second.
Oh, but Phil forgets that it's audio only, so he's going to grab a prop. And he's running to get something, and he's left us with dead air, and I'm trying to fill the dead air right now. Dinkle, your shop is looking great.
Thank you. The basement in our new house has this shiplap wall here.
It's perfect.
I could not be more grateful. I got all my chair patterns hung up, and
you could screw into it and hang stuff. Yeah.
It's beautiful. I'm obsessed. Okay, Phil is back.
Yeah. Listen, I heard that. So I'm trying to help you out with your YouTube views on this. So fully understanding that people are watching this on the radio. So
yeah.
What did you go get, Phil?
My all-time favorite tool of all time for this week.
Okay.
So yeah, mine is because what most people don't know is that we plan all this out way in advance for these podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
But so Bridget shared what she did, so I decided to just stick with the theme.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And mine is a jack plane size, but it's a plane that I made.
Oh.
And I've been using it this week on some reclaimed oak that I'm making some frames for a friend of mine. So what the people that are listening to this on their podcast can't see is it's about 14 inches long. The body is made up of walnut with a beech sole, has a hawk blade in it, and then has like the back of the body is recessed a little bit, the raisey style for a handle. And I made that plane just sort of on a whim a few years ago. and it actually turned out way better than I thought it would, and I use it for everything.
Wait, you made it on so is there plans? Is there Woodsmith plans or anything for it?
There's a popular woodworking plan, actually, and a book. There's a plane maker from, I think he's passed now, Cecil Pierce, I think is his name, was a boat builder and then also made these planes. And we had one of his original planes here on our permanent collection at Woodsmith. And in an auction, I really wanted to get it, but Logan outbid me on it.
As he's apt to do,
I'm fine.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm fine with that now, mostly. But then one of our other long story longer, Dylan did an article on making planes in Cecil Pierce's style for popular woodworking, and so I did a version of that. So it was one of those things where it's really easy on making tools and jigs to try and chase perfection. Okay. And then you just kind of be all bound up and then you make some dumb mistake and it didn't turn out right. For some reason on this one, I was able to just be like, I'm just going to see how this turns out. And going into it relaxed made it a way better plane.
I mean, does it being a jack plane help that? Because you're not like going for the whisper thin shavings of a smoothing plane, and like it can be a rougher tool.
Right. Yeah. But it actually ended up being something that I could use and have used for smoothing because it worked out that way. But yes, that's what I was going for. In the time I was making it, I kind of referred to it as my not so smooth plane. Just because I wanted the pressure off on it. And yeah, like I said, it was pretty enjoyable to do and it's fun to make. I like the fact that it's wood bodied and really light, kind of skates across material, which goes to what we were talking about earlier with Bridget made the point about incorporating hand tools and augmenting what you can do with power tools. And with a jack plane, I don't have a jointer in my shop, a powered jointer. So with my jack plane, I get a surface flat enough to run through the planer. And now I don't have to worry about having a 13-inch planer or jointer to go with my 13-inch planer.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's real. Yeah. Plane. The jack plane is not my favorite tool of all time, but maybe it should have been because once I incorporated a jack plane into my shop, it just changed everything. And I try to use it as a smoothing plane. I don't have a smoothing plane yet. I just take the cut super, super slow and then it all tears out. And I'm like, oh, well, that happened.
Yeah, that's why it's a jack plane, I guess.
Yeah. I'll keep trying though. I'll keep doing it. Okay. I guess I can move on to my all-time favorite tool.
Yeah.
So Ben, I'm doing a bait and switch on you. I said in the chat I was going to do one tool, but then I thought about it and I changed my mind. And I'm here with a really basic one, but my Veritas spoke shave.
Mm-hmm.
I'm obsessed with this thing. And I feel like the thing that I'm so obsessed with this about, especially now that I'm really into chair making like stick chairs and stuff like that, is that the jack plane works just as well in the push motion as it does in the pull motion, where it's super versatile in that way. So I spend a lot of time shaping sticks for chairs and legs and all that. And when I have it in my carver's vise, if I'm dealing with like some weird grain or whatever, if you're starting to get tear out, you can easily just switch around to the opposite direction. And that takes care of the tear out. Where if I was using a block plane, I mean, I guess you can switch the orientation of the block plane, but it's not as intuitive to me. And so, yeah, that's my favorite tool, spoke shave. I use it for everything.
Flat bottom or round bottom?
It's flat bottom. Okay. I need to get a round bottom one, though, for internal curves. But for now, I just set the blade really thick if I'm doing an internal curve, and I hope it catches everything and then scrape it out. But yeah, I love my spoke shave. I just feel like spoke shaves are like the most intuitive tool to use. It's just so fun. Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the most woodworkery I ever feel.
Yes, exactly.
You know, you're like, I am making something, because it's just it's not quite as primal as a draw knife.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's where I really feel the most, but like they're normally tied together in my work.
Right.
If I'm using a draw knife, I'm going to go to a spoke shave. But good spoke shave.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful thing.
Indeed. So Ben, what do you got this week?
I have one and then a different version. I don't think I have talked about this, but I've done a lot of these podcast episodes. I apologize if I have talked about this. It is a pair of screw pliers. And these are a little pair of pliers that I'm holding up, and they are Engineer brand. They're made in Japan. There is an American import version with just a relabeling of it, but they're screw pliers. And I will tell you what the deal is with them. The jaws of a pair of pliers are flat across, right? Because you're holding on to flat things. These pliers are made, the tip of them are rounded to hold a screw. And how many times have you needed to take a screw and grind a little bit off because you don't have the right screw? Which for me happens a lot. Bridget, looks like it's never happened to you once. So
I don't really know what you're talking about.
So I find myself very often, I need, a 7/8 inch long wood screw and I only have 1 inch or whatever. And I will just take the screw to the grinder. And if you've ever done that and try and hold it with a regular pair of pliers, it is really sketchy sometimes, and at best just not a whole lot of fun, because the screw is round and you're just holding it tangentially and there's not enough for it to really grab onto. You don't want to do it with your hands because it's going to get hot, blah blah blah. So a pair of screw pliers, they are not only are they incredible for grinding screws and round things, or holding them while grinding, they are unbelievable for grabbing the head of a stripped out screw. So if you're driving a wood screw and it strips out and you want to back it out, and all of a sudden you can't get it backed out because that stupid Phillips head is ripped out, because we should have listened to the Canadians and gone with Robertsons, but we're not going to talk about that right now. If you try and grab a head of a screw with a regular pair of pliers to unscrew it, again, you cam out. It's very difficult. You can use vice grips. You got to use the big vice grips, because otherwise the jaws flip-flop on you. Everybody's done it. We've all been there. This pair of pliers is made for dealing with screws. I think they're like $15. Everyone that I've ever lent them to has immediately gone out and bought a pair. And it's like, especially in the robot stuff that we do, like everybody has these because they're just incredible. I'm glad
you brought up the vice grip part, because that's what I was wondering, because I've done the same thing with a stripped out screw with vice grips, and then you just mangle the crap out of the screw that it ends up breaking on you.
And it's stripped out, so I'm not worried about mangling it, but you have to use the big vice grips. You can't use the little needle nose vice grips, because the jaws on them don't remain in place when you twist. And these are teeny tiny. You can get in, you can grab a small screw. You don't need to have that much purchase on it. I'm telling you right now, go get Engineer screw pliers M2. I'll post a link. I won't even post an affiliate link. I'll just post a link. Dang it. And, but go get them, and one day you will need them and thank me for it. But there are bigger versions. I am experimenting. These are like linesman pliers, screw pliers.
Oh.
So the tip is the same thing. They're not as cool. I like the little ones. So that's my all-time favorite tool of all time for this week.
Yeah, that's a good niche tool because I feel like that's probably especially good to have around with a stripped out screw because like once a screw strips out, that's just like the darkest moments of any person's life, you know. It's a hard time.
It always happens when you're right on the precipice of finishing something. You know, you're almost there, the screw head breaks or whatever, and you are suddenly thrown into a chasm of bad vibes. So
yeah, absolutely.
All right. We got time for one more question, y'all?
Yeah, let's go to one more question.
Oh, this is the one. This is the one that inspired this trio.
The one is it?
Yeah. Well, in my head it did, and then it just snowballed from there.
Gotcha.
And I called Vic yesterday, and I asked permission for us to not let him answer this question. and
You asked permission to pull rank on him? Is that what I'm getting?
But he said, fine, but if you answer it wrong, I'll be in the comments. So
we look forward to it. And I am now in charge of the YouTube channel, so I will be deleting all of Vic's comments. I'm joking.
Bridget the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
All right. This one is from Bob. I am building a large dovetailed carcass with solid wood cherry, 36 inches tall, 17 inches wide, and my question is about making accurate crosscuts. I do not have a table saw. In the past, I have just used a hand panel saw, but that is always a little out of square, and even when I use some kind of homemade guide, aka a block of wood that I square up, it's a little out of square. And oofda. I don't know what that is, but I put it in there because I liked it. Well, he put it in there. I read it because I liked it. All right. Squaring that much end grain with a hand plane seems painful. I have a bandsaw, but it is awkward to crosscut such large pieces. I've been thinking about a track saw, but they are fairly expensive. Can I use a circular saw with a homemade guide as a cheaper option? I don't think I'll use a track saw for much else, which is why I'm hesitant to buy one. And I don't have enough room in my shop for a table saw, not to mention the cost of that too. Thank you. I enjoy the show. So.
Well, I personally, to crosscut, big panels, sheet goods, all that, I use a circular saw and a piece of MDF with a factory edge. And I have used that all the days of my life, and it's been no problems. That's just the way I do it. And you don't need to invest in a specific track saw if you don't want to. And they even make, these kind of retrofitted like track saw guides that you can buy without a specific track saw. But I measure the distance from the base plate of my circular saw to the blade. I mark that out. I square up the piece of MDF with the biggest square I have, clamp it down, and crosscut that way. And it's simple as can be. So that is my recommendation.
Phil?
I like it. I've done that quite a long time. I think he's doing a dovetailed case, so kudos to him for that. Sounds like he's going to be hand cutting dovetails just by the way he worded the question. I was thinking it in terms of, I don't think his problem is a cutting problem. I think his problem is a trimming problem, in the sense that if he's going to hand cut the dovetails and he's hand cut panels with a hand crosscut saw, like, go at it, cut it as close to 90 as you can get, and then use a framing square and a scrap piece of wood and then a handheld router and a flush trim bit, and then square it up that way. Use your router as like a shooting board, and you can, depending on how long your bit is, clamp your two pieces together and make sure that they're both, the two sides, so to speak, so that they're both square and even with each other, and go with it that way. That's how I did it on a nightstand project I did, where I tried to do as much as I could with hand tools. And yeah, when you're, depending on how out of square you are, that much end grain it's not fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, a router with a bearing guided bit, especially if you can get like one of those cool ones with spiral flutes because it makes such a smooth surface on there. Just trim it and not necessarily worry about that. But Bridget makes a great point on just a circular saw and some kind of an edge guide. Long straight edge guide is a great way to do it in a single cut. Yeah. If you're going to use a circular saw and you don't want to do a track saw, just get a nice blade, a 40 tooth blade that will make those clean cuts. The framing blade that comes with the circular saw is not going to make you spark joy in that particular piece of wood when you're done.
Yeah. No, and yeah, that the router is also a good idea. So whichever one you feel more comfortable with or have on hand. Yeah. And I have something I use sometimes if the piece isn't too big, is I have this thing that I got from my husband's grandpa, and it's basic for the people who are listening. It's basically a bar clamp, except the hardware is out of the way, and it's meant to be an edge guide. And so you just set up, this is like the movable edge, and then you clamp it down. And this is super quick, and it stays out of the way, so you don't have any F-style clamps running into your circular saw. So if the piece isn't too big, I use this thing. And that's just like, it looks like it came from a Harbor Freight, so go with
like
that.
A straight edge clamp or something, I think they're called. We'll dig that up and put it in the show notes.
Clamp and cut edge guide by Pittsburgh, 24-inch.
That's Harbor Freight. There you go.
Yeah.
All right, there you go.
I'm going to riff off both of you and shout out to Woodsmith Shop TV show. Years ago, I learned that whole factory edge thing, but this is, back when you were a wee TV show host, Phil. You all made an edge guide for a circular saw, and then on the other side, it was an edge guide for a router. And I made one of them, and I thought I was the fanciest woodworker that had ever been around. And, again, factory edge, find a nice straight factory edge and cut that off, glue it back down, and then just cut off a clean zero clearance edge, and we'll post a link to that video. And that is perfect. I will say one caveat is my anal retentive nature was I was always worried that when I was using my circular saw that I was going to come away from the edge of the piece.
Sure.
Because it's not captive. You can go, can, cut to the right of it if I'm, doing a right-handed cut. My caveat is to put the guide on your keeper piece. Don't use the guide to cut off the waste piece, or don't use the waste piece as your keeper. The guide should go over the piece that you're trying to cut to dimension or whatever. Because then if you do happen to come away from it a little bit, it's no big deal. You just go back. You've left extra wood on there. No big deal.
Right.
Go back, run it again. You're fine. So that was something I didn't figure out years ago, and I obsessed over, because I have a tendency of obsessing over things like that. Mm-hmm. And eventually I as my part of the Thrifty trio, I got a really great deal on like a returned track saw. And that's what I use. I use my track saw all the time. I use it more and more. And these days I am really using it a lot. So I will say this to Bob, that should you find yourself buying a track saw, I think it is a tool that you will use more than you initially think. But I'm with Bridget. Edge guide, circular saw. Don't hold back. No reason you can't.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that does it for this episode of Shop Talk Live. Thank you so much for joining us. Shop Talk is hosted by me, Ben Strano, and my Canadian compatriot, Vic Teslin. It is expertly mixed by the world's most interesting man, Jeff Rose. Mike Pekovich is Fine Woodworking's creative director, and Bridget Gruber is our associate digital editor. You can find the show notes for this episode at shoptalklive.com. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. It helps us juice the algorithm. And a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to this show also helps us juice that algorithm. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thanks a lot for listening. Jeff, I hope you edited that conversation out.
Oh my gosh, how bad?